And as you enter the room, take a seat. We are going to begin our next panel. We're 1 minute late, so make sure I get this going. This one has a close place to my heart as I'm a big Arsenal fan and obviously work for a major Arsenal platform as well. And this is all about fans. As you can see above here, let's get engaged. How do you obtain and retain the modern fan? And we've got an amazing panel, an esteemed panel to discuss and talk about this. But Toan, he's the moderator. I'm going to bring him on stage and he's going to introduce his panel. And I'm going to stay for this one. I'm going to be right here. So good luck. Enjoy.
Thank you. Come on up, guys. Come on up. Yeah, come on. Come on up. Morning, everyone. Off the mic, to the mic. Can you hear me? Look, it's a real big honor for us to be here today and to speak to you all. I think we had a great day yesterday. Hopefully about something that we all feel very passionately about, which is fandom. My name's Toan Ravenscroft, as you can see on the top there. I've been working with brands, talent, big sponsors, organizations for sort of the best part of 20 years. I head the team at Saatchi Sport and Entertainment in Amsterdam and work across our teams in the UK and Europe. A little anecdote as to why I think this session is important. I got in the taxi this morning. I was saying to these guys, got in the taxi. He said, "Oh, where are you going?" I said, "Johan Cruyff Arena." He said, "Oh, what's the lanyard? What's it about?" I said, "Oh, it's a football conference." He said, "Oh," and he did not stop talking about Ajax all the way down. So we did 30 minutes on Ajax, and I think that's something for us to really remember is we are privileged to be in this space, which means so much to people. Fandom is the passion at the heart of people's life often, and we've got to really respect that. And I think that that's something that I just want us to keep in mind when we're talking about engagement, we're talking about digital content. Get real. We've got to put ourselves in the mind of the fan. And I think that that's just a nice sense to start with. I think now, enough about me. I want to introduce the guys sitting to my left, starting with you, Lucas, if you want to.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Lucas Juri. I'm from Argentina. I live currently in Madrid, part of a big technology company called Globant, present in 35 countries and quite big. And as part of our passion for sports, because of being Argentinian, that comes with our DNA, but also our company is really focused on helping the industry. We set up a dedicated division and company for sports, and that's Sportian. So I look after all the products and services for the industry, and we're working with FIFA, with the La Liga, the Spanish Football League, Belgian Pro League, some NBA franchises, NFL, and last week we have started working with F1. So really exciting times. I think I share with my colleagues here the passion for the sports and how it can impact lives. And we see a certain, let's say, moment of truth for the industry, really accelerating in terms of how to leverage technology and data and making a difference. So really excited to be here. So thank you.
Thank you. Dom?
Thanks, Toan. Morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here. My name's Dom Collingwood. I'm co-founder of Fanzo, formerly known as Match Pint. We are a platform that helps fans all over the world find the best places nearby where they can watch sport with fellow fans, family, friends. So we work with 35,000 pubs, bars, restaurants, fan zones, karaoke bars, if you're in Japan, to help them make the most of the investment that they make into sport. So they might have a Sky subscription or a beIN or TNT or Foxtel or Canal. So we help them advertise and promote sport in their venue. We've been used now by more than 20 million people around the world to find a great place to watch sport with friends, and increasingly work with brands, with broadcasters, and now rights holders to help them unlock the value of this out-of-home space. So today, really interested to, I think, explore the relationship between this local passion, which has been the center of fandom for many years, and how that is being captured in a now much more global world in which fans extend from Melbourne to Manchester to Madrid. How do we talk about and think about engagement in that world, and what role does out-of-home, in-home, and the stadium play in this kind of ever-evolving and globalized world?
Brilliant, thanks, Dom. And then Thomas, and if I could just ask you to add on the end of your introduction, just a brief line, your point of view on fan engagement in one line, and then we'll work back down the channel just on that question.
Okay, well, my name is Thomas van Schaik. I have never not worked in sport. Started out in this stadium, actually, in the NFL Europe, which is a long time ago. Moved on to PSV Eindhoven in the time when we were still actual Champions League contenders, which is a long time ago as well. And then I moved on to Adidas, where I was for quite a while. I headed up their global brand department, and also was responsible for a department called Global Icon Building, where I ended up working with many football players like the Messis and the Beckhams of this world. From there, I moved on to the Dutch Olympic Committee, where I was their CMO, and have always interacted with fans and the passion around fans. I believe in storytelling. We are storytelling animals, and it takes people to tell great stories, and it takes stories to build strong brands. So being a fan is not necessarily something you do, it is something you are. And trying to commercialize who you are is always a bit sensitive. And the word customer can feel like a curse word to many fans, because they do not want to be commercialized for who they are. They want to be taken seriously in their passion and in their love for the game. So I think that's an important departure point.
Brilliant. And then sort of bringing us back to this title, fan engagement for you and what you do with the athlete brand now. What's your point of view in sort of one simple line around the word fan engagement and what that means?
Well, I think people love following people more than they love following brands. And you see this in basically every metric. So if we look, for instance, at football in Euro 2024, then all the 24 national federations combined have a following of 175 million followers. 175 million. And that can feel like a lot. But then if we take 24 players who are actually playing at UEFA Euro 2024, then they have 1.9 billion followers. So all the federations combined, 24 federations compared to those 24 players, is a factor 10.
And I think that point around player power and player followship and fandom of players is something that we're going to come back to in this piece as we move forward. Dom, in terms of fan engagement from Fanzo's perspective, what's your sort of one-line point of view to bring today?
Well, I guess, first of all, it might be helpful to define what we mean by fan and then engagement. And I think I take inspiration in that line that many people will know from Nike in their mission statement about wanting to serve every athlete in the world. And for them, if you have a body, you are an athlete. And that has been a guiding principle of their business for such a long time. And I think that in today's world, we want to have a similar kind of approach to understanding what a fan is. It is a huge spectrum. And it is basically, if you have any interest in sport, you are a fan. But who that fan is can range hugely. We talk at Fanzo about football fans and football flirts. So football fans are the kind of people who will go to, in our world, the pub every single week to watch Burnley play and hang out with their friends with whom they have real, lifelong commitment and relationships in terms of finding their sense of belonging. But I can also tell you that this summer, my mum will be a huge football fan if England get to the semi-finals of Euro 24. She will know all of the players. She will be all over Facebook talking about how she knew that Ollie Watkins was the best replacement for Harry Kane and has been for years. So I think we have to understand, and Lucas, I think, has a really interesting view on this from what he's doing. There is a huge spectrum of different fans, from those that might engage once a decade to those that are engaging every single day when the game is on, when the game is off, all around. And I think understanding, having an approach to trying to understand who each of those fans are, it is not a one-size-fits-all approach in the same way that there is a different pair of trainers for every athlete in the world that Nike seems to want to engage with. So too do we need to have a different approach to every fan that we have. So I think engagement in turn is also a really, really big space, and it depends on what type of fan are we talking to.
Really nice. I love the term flirts, and I think you're right. And I think in terms of engagement, yes, it could be downloading an app for a super fan like me, or it could be a simple Facebook like from your mum. Lucas, your thoughts on that and engagement specifically before we get into some more questions?
I think that there's a couple of concepts that are fascinating, and I would say when working with some clubs, there's a challenge because fan engagement for me and from the work we do, it's about building meaningful relationships. But then when you sit down with Barcelona or Real Madrid, just to give an example, they probably have 100,000 members, but they have 500 million followers and fans around the world. So then the challenge is, how do you build a meaningful relationship with people in China or Japan or Australia or many other places when they might probably not get to the stadium for many years or some of them ever, but you still have an emotional connection with them that you need to nurture and grow. So I think that's a fascinating aspect of fan engagement.
Brilliant, and I think you've all started to pick on really interesting threads that we're going to try and hope to sort of investigate a little bit more. And I think the second thing that I wanted to come on to was, when it comes to modern football fans, how do you think they're different from the football fan of 10 years ago, of 5 years ago, of 5 minutes ago? Because we know that this is evolving piece by piece, and I think there were some interesting points already in there, Dom. You know, we're talking about that very in-depth fan versus that very light touch fan. Dom, why don't you kick us off on this one, and then I'll come to Thomas.
Well, I think 40 years ago, if you were an Ajax fan, you probably came to this arena to come and watch Ajax play. Or maybe not this arena.
Exactly.
But you came to watch the game in the stadium. I think Man United fans, for example, 40 years ago, 90% of Man United fans in 1970 would come to the stadium to watch the game. Now, less than 0.09% of Man United fans will ever get to the stadium, as I said. From Madrid to Melbourne to Manchester to Mexico, fans are now all over the world. And I think what Lucas just said about having a connection that is based on emotion is really at the heart of what we're talking about here. Because whether or not you are in Melbourne, or you're in Manchester, or you're in Amsterdam, football has the power to give a sense of belonging, a sense of connection, not just to the club or the athlete, but also to your fellow fan, the people around you. And I think in terms of the way in which Fanzo think about this, we have a line internally at our business which we say that any moment of sport in terms of celebration or commiseration that is experienced in isolation is a lost opportunity. And I think, if I asked everyone in this room to just take 5 seconds and just cast your mind back to the most euphoric you have felt as a fan, just take 5 seconds to do that. And I'm sure that there is a huge range of experiences, but what I can guarantee is that not a single one of us in this room had a memory that began with the line, "So I was sat by myself on a sofa at home, and I opened a can of beer, and I watched the game." That may be a sense of following, and I think there is a difference here between a football follower and a football fan, and I think the key to that is what Lucas has just been talking about the emotional connection. And I think in order to unlock that emotional connection, we have to think about football's power to bring people together. And for us, that is all about the third space. As we've said, most people will not go to a stadium to watch the team that they love or to follow the players that they love. So what are we doing at Fanzo in particular to bring those communities together to make sure that they're experiencing those moments of euphoria or those moments of commiseration in the fellowship of other fans?
Thanks, Tom. I think some really good food for thought already. Thomas, from your perspective, the modern football fan, what are the kind of key characteristics of the modern football fan that you're tapping into, that you're seeing out there as trends, that we're kind of right up to the modern moment?
Yeah, well, one-liner that I often use is, if you watch the World Cup final by yourself, then something in your life has dramatically gone wrong. Yeah, that's basically back to Dom's point. Yeah, I'd say fandom, obviously, as introduced by Dom, has given birth to the remote fan. And when I grew up in the city of Utrecht. I think I even speak English with an Utrecht accent. That's a first.
Misschien.
There you go. And I was a steward at FC Utrecht when I was 12. And I can still name the starting 11 from that team, starting with Jan-Willem van der Ede in the goal and Herman Verrips in the defense, for the Dutchies that are old enough to actually know. But if you would ask a boy in my street, the starting lineup of FC Utrecht today, then they will have a hard time. But they will easily be able to call out the starting 11 of Real Madrid. And that has made sports a very different market. Fans have access to every game and every sport at every moment in time, anywhere on the planet. Meaning that sports has become a much more brand-driven industry. While it was driven by geographic proximity at first, right now you see that it's a completely brand-driven industry. In addition to the remote fan, there's now also the fluid fan, meaning that if Leo Messi switches teams, then so does 25 million of his fans all of a sudden become Inter Miami fans. And in the past it used to be the case, there's this old survey that said that 5% of people actually change their religion, but only 3% change their club affiliation. And I think it's wonderful that when you go to the UK that there's still men my age that are passionate Nottingham Forest fans. And I also love the fact that if you go to the US, then there are fans of the Jets, who are the most losing team in history, I believe. One more point I wanted to make, which is a lovely thing about fandom, is of course people unite around their passion, and that's fantastic. But if you ask a Red Sox fan to define a Red Sox fan, then within 2 seconds they will share who they hate, which I think is also quite interesting. Yeah. And when are you most happy? It's when you beat your biggest rival. So basically what you do is you give the keys to your happiness to the entity that you hate most, which I think is quite ironic in a way.
Coming back to the sort of, just to pick up on something you said there about the very young fan now and say the young fan here in the Bilmer area, say, what do you think are going to be the big differences from them as compared to you a few years ago?
Yeah, well, I think, of course, sports consumption has changed. Disney and ESPN came out with a bunch of research that said that 50% of all sports consumption is now digital. And that means that the entryways into sport are digital, are changed, and how we consume sport has changed. How younger generations consume sport has dramatically changed. Also, since the pandemic, we were at the risk of losing an entire generation of fans there. Because kids basically choose a club when they're 8. And then they're stuck for life, which is why I'm very Dutch, but I lived in Germany at the time when my oldest was 8. And there's one German football fan in the entire Netherlands, and it's my son. So I know exactly how awful this is, you know. It's like, hi, I'm Thomas, my son is a German football fan. But the idea of young fans and converting young customers into football fans, I think is the gateway into sports is through athlete fandom. Because the athletes aspire, the athlete engage, the athlete makes kids dream. And this is why I think clubs or federations should do a much better job at actually celebrating, empowering and facilitating their individual athletes.
I think we'll come back to that point. Lucas, to bring you in on this, Thomas touched on the digital touch points. From your perspective, digitally, how are you seeing clubs, brands engage with the modern football fan from a pure digital lens?
First of all, I think the shift in the profile and the way they consume it's incredible, and it's accelerating as well. So these new fans and this new generation of fans are very interactive. They want to participate, a sense of community and socializing, with gamified experiences as well. And they always are used to and they are expecting personalized experiences. So most of the things that they consume have a tremendous amount of intelligence built almost real time. If I go back and watch my 15 years old kid, how he consumes entertainment, all the platforms that he's using, and this is what we see in fans, are extremely intelligent in providing what's the next attractive thing for him to consume. So for clubs, leagues, federations, this is something that they need. It's like a wake-up call, because they're competing against TikTok, they're competing against X, which, by the way, I recently saw numbers on on the content exchange in the X platform, and the number one thing is sports. So we are competing on that side, so it's extremely important that as clubs and sports organization, we have and we build one view of our fan so that we can then deliver consistently relevant, personalized experiences for them. Otherwise, you're going to lose them.
I think that's really where it can get very, very smart and really tailoring that content heavily, heavily, heavily. Dom, I wanted to come back to something that you raised about those, I think you sort of called it before, sort of the moments you want to bottle, you know, the magic that you want to bottle in real life. What are you seeing in, to sort of flip right from the digital, right to the out-of-home experience, the fan zone experience, say, where those moments are actually happening when you're surrounded by friends or potentially new friends shared around that passion point of football fandom. What are the things that you're seeing there, and what do you feel is potentially untapped that people can tap into in the audience?
Well, I think to help explain our view on this, it's helpful to look at something that is happening way, way, way further back in the funnel, in the kind of sports business funnel, which is about what's happening at the moment in terms of the media rights and the broadcast rights. We've obviously had this boom over the last 20 years as most organizations, sports organizations in the world, have exponentially grown the revenue that they are making from TV broadcast. And in turn, particularly in the UK, where I'm from, you know, a lot of that money goes back into the clubs. Now, that has begun to stagnate slightly recently. I think we're seeing for the first time kind of at least level, sometimes even down rounds in terms of the value of these rights. So there's two things that have happened recently that have really caught our attention, which I think provide some interesting background here. I think we talked yesterday in a number of panels about the emergence of OTT, over-the-top broadcasting. So Javier Tebas from La Liga talked a lot about this as being one of the two major disruptions that are going to affect the sports industry in the next 5 years. So if you think about something like America, NFL, the biggest sports brand out there, perhaps there are some athletes who might have bigger following, they sold their Sunday ticket rights to YouTube. Now YouTube have absolutely no business with pubs, bars, restaurants, etc. So what they did is the NFL created a joint venture with Redbird Capital, who, disclaimer, have quite a lot of money, and the NFL to create a company called Everpass. And they sold the residential rights to YouTube, and then they sold the out-of-home rights, or the commercial premises rights, to Everpass to distribute into pubs, bars, restaurants, etc. Now, there's two things that happened. You know, first of all, commercially, this makes a lot of sense. You know, have two different rights properties that you're able to sell. So unsurprisingly, the value of those rights went up. And we saw something very similar happen in Europe when about 18 months ago, UEFA's rights for club competition in Europe were up for renewal in Spain. They were facing a down round, and so they split the rights. They sold the residential rights to Telefonica, and then La Liga Bar took on the commercial premises rights. Again, what looked like it was going to be a down round, would have been terrible news for UEFA, actually became a great news story because they were able to increase their rights. Now, that might seem like that is completely irrelevant to a conversation about fan engagement. But as well as the commercial benefit of that, the second thing is that previously, someone like Sky in the UK has been responsible for how the content is delivered in both the home and the bar. Because they make 90% of their revenue from subscribers at home, they focus their attention on how engaging that product is, and the bar and the restaurant and the fan zone kind of becomes this like little brother that's annoying and you just kind of go and deliver it. If you've got companies like Everpass or La Liga Bar, whose sole purpose is to distribute that content to an out-of-home fan, it opens up this huge opportunity in terms of focusing the attention on what sort of engagement that fan is looking for. So a number of rights holders are now jumping on this. You look at La Liga, who have their 29s bar concept. If anyone is in London, I really recommend, if you're interested in this space, to go to the Formula One arcade to go and see what they're doing in terms of fan engagement, not just during the day on a Monday afternoon when you have so many people in the simulators trying to race against Max Verstappen. But on race days, when they sell out this entire space for people to have their little screens as if they're on the pit wall, it's a very, very different kind of immersive experience where, to come back to something that we've been talking about, you feel like you are part of a community. You're not a number on a spreadsheet. You're not a like on a social media platform. You are there surrounded by fellow fans, experiencing the euphoria, the drama, the passion of connecting with fellow fans around that. So I think that's what we're beginning to see, is leaning into what is unique about this space. How can we bring this to life in a way which is not just packaging up a kind of throwaway bit of residential right, but actually focusing on, this is the fan, they're in a pub, what do they want, what makes their experience brilliant?
Can I add something on that? I think the level of business model transformation that we will see, it's going to be incredible, and touching on some of the points mentioned. And I will complement on the technology part of this evolution. So for most of these organizations, and we are working with the NFL and FIFA on these strategies, to build their own direct-to-fan platform is kind of recovering the data and the knowledge of those fans. And that's a lot of power. And that's going to empower these organizations to transform the industry going forward in many, many ways. So I just wanted to add that, because that's the layer that it's enabling these changes to happen.
Thomas, you wanted to come in. I'll pick back up on the data point, because I think it's important to demystify data.
It's exactly what excited me, to be honest, because if we take the NFL and we take the FIFA, yep, we add the MLB, we add the NHL, we add, which one am I missing? NBA. All of them together on X, Facebook and Instagram, 415 million followers. Just Neymar, Messi and Ronaldo, 1.8 billion. And of course, the NFL and all of these lovely organizations have been building their expertise, have been hiring people as smart as Lucas to actually do this for them for the last decades. Many of these players weren't even born when the NFL started building their social media communities. Already these players, without knowing what they're doing, single guys being armed with a mobile phone, are outperforming all these rights holders. And now we're looking at the expertise that Lucas could bring to all of these individual players. How is it that rights holders and clubs are still ignoring this tremendous level of engagement? What is Messi actually doing? Well, he's taking a picture of the World Cup trophy in his bed. Okay, it's a great prop, I give him that, well done. But it's still a single guy with a mobile phone laying in his bed, outperforming every media organization on the planet. And that, I think it's astonishing, because that's what is actually exciting people around the planet. And I think it's astonishing that it hasn't been done yet. So I'm starting a private company. I'm hiring Lucas, and or Lucas is hiring me probably, I don't know. But the opportunity that's laying there, also for federations and clubs, to actually equip, facilitate, and empower and educate or assist their individual athletes. It's a miracle to me that so many of these rights holders are still positioning themselves in a way where they are competing with their own talent. The war for talent is over, and the talent has won.
I think that's a really nice point, and something we can pick back up on later in terms of quick wins for people in the room and things that I know that you believe passionately in. I wanted to pick back up on data. The D word. I'm sure lots of us in this room are, yeah, data, we've got to drive our data. Yeah, we've got to drive data signups. Yeah. Why? What's it important for? And I think you've touched upon it, but it'd be great if you can really just give us a little bit more on the D word.
In every meeting with a partner or client, I think data will appear as a conversation within less than a minute. Everyone is having challenges on integrating data, in having one source of truth about things. And that's the underlying foundation of everything else. So without data, you cannot connect your touch points. You cannot know the fan going to your app and then visiting your fantasy gaming app, or coming to the venue, or joining as a subscriber on the OTT. So this is something that I think it's among the biggest challenges in most organizations. Having said that, I think we were looking into data and the impact of connecting data within the ecosystem of La Liga recently, and looking into the impact of some fan engagement campaigns last year. It was funny that we found on the way we create value for a specific sponsor, which was Burger King, for example, to make it very tangible. We realized that over a year, we sold over 500,000 burgers to fans at the right time, before their favorite team was playing away, to make the experience really great. To the point that made La Liga the biggest Burger King franchise in Spain.
I mean, that commercially is magic.
So,
it's gold, right?
but that's the power of data. When you connect the dots, you have created value to the fan with something that he wanted to take. You created value to the sponsor. You created value to the league out of transforming data into an action at the right time to the right fan.
I think it's a really nice just example of that. And if I come back and put my head back into the taxi driver who brought me here today, I can see him being involved in that. You know, he's going, now I'm on the way to the stadium, I get my burger, this is fantastic. It works for me, it's seamless. I think interconnectivity is a really interesting point. We've got people representing different parts of the fan experience and fan engagement. But interconnectivity is a big part of that. And I know that's something that you spoke about right the way from the sort of stadium all the way through. And I think I'd love to bring the other guys in as well on interconnectivity. Thomas, you were talking about fan fests, for example, and that sort of real life experience. How do you see everything connecting together across the pie in fan engagement?
Well, I think the word fan comes from the Latin, and it is actually, the meaning of it is divinely but insanely inspired. Fanaticus, right? Divinely but insanely inspired. I think that's quite typical. I have the tendency to transform into an orange, entity when the Dutch national team plays. And I love sharing this experience with my friends, much like Dominic was explaining. When we look at these fan zones, then basically their major birth was, I think, 2006 in the FIFA World Cup, when all of Germany basically displayed the power of sport by actually uniting. The wall was fallen, but Germany actually reunited at that moment, during that summer, the Sommermärchen, the summer fairy tale of the German reuniting. When we look at how that has developed, then I think there's a little bit of discussion about the business models that best facilitate that. But there's no denying that fan zones are, or the shared celebration of football is here to stay. We tried to do it in this stadium with the House of Orange during the World Cup in Qatar, because we felt fans needed a place to actually celebrate and come together, and not too many Dutch fans were all too excited about going to Qatar. Times were really challenging. I think we played on a Monday morning at 11. But still, we had 25,000 people here dressed in orange celebrating the game on the other side of the planet. And I'd say that if the World Cup is in Mexico, the US, and Canada, then all the game times will be quite favorable. And I think we'll give it another go by trying to invite people to share their passion for the Dutch team. And I think it has potential to do this in other places, particularly in Europe, because of the time differences.
I think you've touched upon a point that we did do some prep, so we spoke yesterday. One of the things that we discussed yesterday was that sort of distinction between live sport and that sort of sacred moment, if you like, around live sport, and what we're seeing much more is different consumption, as we all know, the shoulder content, the endless podcasts that I'm listening to every single day, all the highlights, the TikTok reels. I think I just wanted to talk about that, and maybe I'll come to you first, Dom, is the live experience or the sort of long experience outside of that. How are you seeing that evolve?
I think Thomas actually made articulated this really well in a conversation yesterday, which is that the live event is kind of the gateway into sport for a lot of people. I remember, and I'm sorry to bring this up, but my first really indelibly etched moment as a sports fan was as a 7-year-old being allowed to stay up by my dad to see England beat the Netherlands 4-1 in Euro 1996. And this was a moment of transformation for me as a fan, because mainly I learned that football had the power to extend my bedtime, which was exciting. But that was, that idea in my life of that being a gateway, I think is the same on a weekly basis. So coming back to this idea of fans and flirts, not every football fan, not every fan of your club or member of your organization is watching every single game. Not every member of your club or fan of your team is listening to every podcast or is looking at every bit of content that you put out. So in the same way that I think, there was a great talk yesterday with Alex and Thomas from Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich about, the different stages of the fan journey. And there is reach, engagement, relationship, and then monetization. And we have to understand that, through the course of a day, the role that we have to play with fans, it might be at a very different stage of that journey. And I think one of the things that we observe people often coming a cropper in this situation is trying to go straight to a transactional value, trying to go straight to buy a ticket or buy the jersey or something like that. Understand that in time, it's like any marketing. You have to build awareness, you have to build engagement, you have to build a relationship, and then when you have trust and you have connection, you have earned the right to have that transactional relationship. So build the emotional relationship first, and I think that's what we're seeing in terms of the shoulder content, as you talk about it, is what keeps you interested, but it's that moment of adulation that you get from watching Holland avenge the defeat in 1996 by beating England. That's the moment that you're most euphoric. That's the moment when you're most likely to want to engage with the team. It's when you're most likely to want to engage in the partner products that are available. Tapping into that emotion earns you the right to then have that transactional relationship.
Lucas, anything to add on that sort of live versus non-live point that we sort of touched on? Anything to bring to that?
So many things. I think the power of live events, it's so clear. We can see here we're in an amazing stadium and venue that it's preparing for a concert in a day or two. So the level of emotional connection you get with entertainment when it's live, and the whole experience and the journey has been frictionless and seamless for you to really enjoy the most of that event. It's just unbelievable. In my personal case, my son went with me and we were together in Qatar. To this day, he says, this is the best thing I ever lived. And he will probably say that for the next 50 years. And it is also for me. And we made friendships with people there just because of the sharing of something really special. But again, you need to get to know the fan. You need to make sure that he plans the visit, the tickets, everything, so that he can enjoy the most, share it with others and the loved ones around them, and then create a memory for life.
I'm conscious of the time, and this conversation's kind of run quite fast, so we'll keep going with a couple more, hopefully. Coming back to player power, I think there's an interest in that probably in the room with a lot of people with different vested interests around that. And you mentioned almost like it feels like a little bit of an open goal, to use that tired analogy. But there's a reason why it isn't happening, and I think that we need to investigate why that is and how that can happen. But I'd love to get more of your thoughts, Thomas, on the power of players and what's going to happen next. I think we see, as you said, the Messi effect with Inter Miami, and the following just went boom. What are we seeing? What's going to be coming down the line for everyone to be thinking about that you think is really interesting to tap into?
Well, I think the role of players or athletes in general is broadening very quickly, and I think that athletes are waking up to the idea that they have entrepreneurial opportunities. If we look at the music industry, then I think in terms of this particular aspect, it's a little bit ahead of the sports industry, simply because their entire business model has turned digital already. But if you look at the Beehive from Beyoncé, you look at the Little Monsters of Lady Gaga, or you look at the Swifties of Taylor, then those fan communities and their spending power is absolutely second to none. And they believe in the authenticity, the genuine interest, and the passion of the athlete, or sorry, in this the performing artist that they support. In the same time, Taylor's tour is the most gross revenuing tour that there has ever been. So this treasured relationship and monetization, if the know, like, and trust factor is absolutely there, then that is absolutely no issue. Now, clearly, the transition into the creator economy, from a Coke bottle that you put on a supermarket that you sell, and now you have created a customer, now you're running promotions, and now you're trying to turn customers into fans. Basically, that model transformed by, here's a community. We get to know this community through the data and the analytics and their behavioral assessments. And now we start developing products and services that these fans are actually interested in buying, whether that is digital products or products, services, events, experiences, whatever they may be. And now you're also enabling your fans to also become your customers. But I think that is a transition. If fandom is degraded, demoted to being a commercial relationship, it is inevitably going to fail, and it's a mistake that sports should definitely not make.
I think wise words in terms of, they're fans first, not customers. Dom, just coming on to you, what do you think are the key changes in terms of the ways and like the challenges that are actually out there that people out here can learn, a sort of a key takeaway, if you like, from today? What can people go and take on, and what's evolving out there you think that hey, go grab it? That's something that you can do as a quick win.
Well, I think the point that Thomas made about spending power and honouring the role of the fan first and their emotional connection, but understanding that if you honour the fan and you treat them with respect and you recognise them as a fan first and perhaps as a customer second rather than the other way around, it opens up tremendous commercial opportunities for you. And I think there was a great talk yesterday with Peter and Ibrahim talking about the way in which brands and rights holders can work in partnership to be able to elevate that experience for fans. So, for example, we two examples in our world to talk about. The first, which I'm really excited to say, is that from next week, when you go into the Euro 24 app, the UEFA app, you will see for the very first time a fan zone and a bar finder, which is powered by our technology and our relationship with venues to be able to help people traveling to Germany to experience the very, very best of that tournament with other fans around the game. So, you have a ticket for one game, you want to watch the other games, you want to go and grab a beer. Now, of course, the beauty of that is that opens up a huge opportunity for Bitburger, their sponsor, to be able to drive people to stockists that stock Bitburger and to drive their agenda. Bitburger promote, it helps them as well. But there is also a role to be played that focuses on the particular need of the fans. So to give a very different example, speaking about some work that we've just done with the Women's Six Nations, they understood that what their fans want is very, very different. They have a drive, particularly through Guinness, their major sponsor, about accessibility, about community. It's not just enough to have a Women's Six Nations game on the TV if it's going to be drowned out by a big Premier League game on in the background. So they wanted much smaller scale, but commitment from the venues to be able to champion their content, to be able to welcome female fans who wanted a different, genuinely family-friendly atmosphere as opposed to some of the other stuff. So I think, the two things for me. One, really, really understand that this 10% of your audience is watching sport out of home, but they have 25% of the spending power. And also looking at the role and the partnership that commercial partners can play with you to be able to incentivize, engage, and maximize the potential of that audience.
Brilliant. And Lucas, sort of final comments from you, I think, really on this.
I think we are talking about changes on our fans, which are the basis of everything we do, and our athletes and their role. We're talking about the acceleration in terms of the usage of data and technology, business model transformation. So these are things that have happened to many industries along the last few decades. When we look into how technology have affected the sustainability and the success of industries like financial services, telecommunication, and even hard industries as energy or transport, media, you know that this is a fundamental time, and it's happening in sports right now. So if you're having massive issues and problems with data. If you don't have a holistic view on how you're leveraging all your touch points, your digital apps, and so forth, you're leaving money on the table. Money in the way of being value that can really be created and delivered for the success of the organization you're in, and for the fandom and growing that fan base. So I think that's the opportunity, and I think the accessibility to solutions and technology, it's has gone down, and it's extremely easy to get quality things nowadays, which was not the case probably 10 years ago. So I think it's a massive opportunity for anyone in the industry. So yeah, it's exciting.
Brilliant. I think that's all we've got time for, but hopefully some really clear thoughts around fan engagement, how you can do that sort of player perspective, whether you're having that amazing experience in the bar or whether you're really firing it up digitally and through all different touch points. At this point, I'm contractually obliged to say you can enjoy a Heineken at the Champions League final after the mentions of Bitburger and Guinness. But other than that, thanks very much, everyone. Hope that was a really good panel for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, feel free to stay or head over to the other stage, but the next panel up will be fighting on too many fronts. So if you want to stay around, our players in Europe playing too many matches for players and fans. That'll be the next panel, starting in around 15 minutes. We'll see you then. When my homies pull up on your block, they make that thing go grata-ta-ta.